User interface design. So today we will be doing module 4, which deals with how to use text for web pages, then effective feedback that can be obtained, guidance and assistance as to about how to use these web pages, and then internationalization. Internationalization meaning how do you use either icons, image, multimedia coloring, or maybe text as well across the globe, because some countries will have different ideas of different colors or images, etc. So coming to writing your text messages. So initially we have to ensure that we write clear text and message. Okay, so wordings on the interface and its screens is the basic form to communicate with the user. So as we all know, we have all used web pages, so we know that the wordings that you see on the interface or on the screen is what is used to communicate with the user. So we must use clear and meaningful words or messages and text in order to enhance the usability and minimize whatever confusion that might occur. So when we come to using of words, we have to use regular words which can be understood by everybody. So make sure that you do not use technical words such as file spec or any made up words or any terms that is not understandable by everybody, such as a bend or de-archive, etc. So these are terms that maybe technical people would understand but not any layman. Then do not use any abbreviations or acronyms. Why? Because it is very confusing. So if you have to use an abbreviation or an acronym, then make sure that during the initial phase of when that particular word is encountered, it is fully spelled out, or the full form of the word is given. After which you can first explain what the word is, the full form of the word, explain what acronym is going to be used for it, and based on that it can be given in the document. Then you must consider the contradictions of short forms. So do not use any negative words or do not use any short forms. So won't versus will not, just for an example of a short form. Will not sounds much better and sounds much professional, while won't sounds very unprofessional. Okay, so you have to not use contradicting words either, because when you use contradicting words it leads to more confusion. Then coming to positive terms, so avoid prefixes like dis, un, ir, etc. So these are negative words, right? When you say discontinue or uninterested, these are negative words, so avoid using that and you stick to more positive terms. Then using action words. So action words is much more interactive than using passive words. And then you have you've got to be consistent. So the entire document has to be consistent, whether you're using the words, different words, or text, or punctuations, etc. All of these words should be very consistent. Then you have multiple word phrases which have to be more readable in the entire phrase. What this point basically says is, if you have many words, please ensure that it is given in one line so that it is easily understandable and readable. People do not have to put in much or a lot of effort in order to read these multiple words. Then of course you must ensure that abbreviations, mnemonics, acronyms should not include any punctuation, because these punctuations, when you're using it for abbreviations and mnemonics or even acronyms, it is misleading and confusing to the reader. Then your sentences and messages. Your sentences and messages, it's obvious that it has to be brief and simple, because too many lines and very complicated words would again confuse the reader. And it should be directly and immediately usable, as in you should not waste your time reading for whatever messages that you are trying to pass in your document. So it should be directly and available immediately. So affirmative sentences to be used. So try to avoid using negative statements, because psychologically it affects the reader. So try to be affirmative and use positive statements. And as said, active voice is usually easier to understand than passive voice. And try to have the main topic at the beginning. So if you are trying to give a sentence or a message, basically this works for messages, try to use the actual main topic right at the beginning, and try to stick to the same grammatical structure so that again the system grammatical structure for elements of sentences, so that there is no confusion for the reader. then imply that the system is awaiting the user's direction. So make sure that your user thinks that he is controlling the system and not the other way around, because obviously users would not want to be controlled by a machine. The negative tones or actions or threats are not very friendly. So avoid negative sentences and do not make it threatening. Try to be positive and friendly. Then encouraging messages obviously is better than insulting messages. That is obviously very obvious. And you should remain factual and informative and should not attempt at humor or punishment, because being factual and informative is very professional. Trying to attempt humor or punishment may be okay if you're writing a blog or something, or you're trying to have a personal conversation, but not if you're trying to put out a document on the web. So coming to messages on the screen. So screen messages are basically classified into two categories. Firstly, you have your system messages, and next you have an instructional message or a prompt message. So these system messages are generated by systems to keep the users informed of the system state and its various activities. So instructional messages, these the prompt message, these tells how the tells the user how to work with or complete the screen that is displayed. So usually your prompt messages like end or cancel that keeps popping up on your screen tells you what you're supposed to do, right? So these are the two different types of messages. Then coming to system messages. So under system messages, firstly you have status message, which provides information about progress of some operation. So just to give you an example, when you're downloading something, when you're downloading a file or something, the progress of the download is indicated to you. So this is usually a status message, meaning it gives the status or the progress of any particular operation. Then your informational messages or notification message. So these are messages that will give you a notification, usually represented by a I, a small I icon to the left of the message. It gives you the information about particular operation at hand. Then you have your warning messages, which is usually displayed with an exclamation mark. So these gives you system warnings, and it is up to the user to determine whether the situation is actually a problem, or he might ask the system itself to advise him whether to proceed or not. Then you have critical messages or action messages. So these messages are usually represented either a stop sign, or it says do not delete something, etc., or it gives you an X with a circle. So sometimes you might have noticed that if you try to delete a critical file, then this is the message that you get. Then you have question message, where a question message a question is asked and you are given a choice of options. So sometimes when you're trying to close a file, you get a question message saying, are you sure you want to close, or are you sure you want to delete something, and this comes with a question mark. Then coming to writing a message box text. So you have your title bar. Okay, so I'm sure all of you have seen these message boxes where you have a title bar right at the top, which identifies the source of the message. It tells you where the message is coming from. Then of course you have a message box, which provides the clear and concise description of the condition that is causing the message box to be displayed, right? It tells you why that message box has popped up. Then there are some rules that you have to follow while writing this message box. So you have to use complete sentences with the ending punctuation, ending punctuation such as do you want to close, question mark, or shall I, or using a exclamation mark if it's a warning, or you are using a full stop if it's just giving information, etc. So also you have to ensure that these messages within the message box do not exceed more than 2 or 3 lines, because first of all it's a pop-up message box and it has to be small and concise. Alright, so then you center the text in the window and include the relevant icon identifying the type of message. So what are the different message box controls? So sometimes you have command buttons, nothing but your OK or cancel or yes no buttons. So these are commands where you're giving where you're directly telling the system what command or what that you want the system to do. So like I said, it is usually an OK button is used, where you don't have to make a choice, but you just click on it and it is done. or then using your close box, this enables the title bar to close. So it includes a cancel button, right? So when you're closing something, when you want to close a file or something, you have a cancel, yes, no, cancel, and in the side you have a into mark or an X mark which says close something. So these are the message box controls. So now coming to instructional messages, this is to provide instructional information, right? So an example that has been given here is your error instructional message. So maybe you're trying to search for something, but you haven't mentioned in the search box what you're trying to search for. So if you're giving a blank, if you're hitting enter to a blank message, it says error, and it says please hit back your back button and enter the search, whatever you wanted to search. So these are instructional messages. Then coming to text for web pages. So what is text for web pages, right? So you're using words, you're using error message, you're using instructions, etc. So when you're using words on your web pages, you try to avoid words that are specific to the web. So you don't say follow this link or click here because you're trying to self promote. So professionally, that is not what people try to do. So then next comes your error messages. This provides helpful error message so that if something is incomplete or you're requesting for something that does not exist, then error messages, appropriate error messages have to be displayed so that the user knows what to do next. Then of course, once your error message pops up, you have to give the instructions to the user to make sure instructions are detailed enough to be understood, right? So then coming to presentation, you should obviously give proper presentation. It should be legible, it should be neat, it should be understandable by the user, and you should also provide text that contrasts with the background. Okay, then writing objectively, meaning trying to be concise and mentioning the objective of that particular message. Also, you have to use the inverted pyramid organization, which is nothing but starting with the most important things at the top and then following it up with the what is less important. So again, as said, you must not have too many links so that it confuses the reader again, and it is better to have bullets and neatly list out the document in with tables and different headings and bold types, etc., to make it more easily understandable by the reader. Then coming to links. So this creates wordings that make make links that the users can predict where the links leads. So just as an example, you would have all gone to your Wikipedia web pages. There you see that if you are searching for a certain topic, then under that topic, most relevant things to that particular topic is again highlighted, right? So say for example, you search for Marvel Comics. So under Marvel Comics, you will have the document stating what Marvel Comics are, what are the different comics underneath that comes under Marvel Comics. So under Marvel Comics now there is Spider-Man, there is say Batman, and there is X-Men, and there is your Avengers, etc. So all these would be linked separately so that you can click on that. Even though it is related to Marvel Comics, the entire explanation is not given there, it is given in a different link. So that's what your links do. So link titles, obviously, just like how you would highlight, say Superman. Under Marvel Comics, you would highlight Superman. That gives the link title. When you click on Superman, it of course sends you the details of everything about Superman. Then coming to page title. So this should contain many keywords as possible. So when you're providing a page title, so you have a page, right? So in your document, just say for example your Superman page, right? Your page title would be Superman, and under that it should the title of the Superman should explain about what Superman is, who it is, what it is, why, how he becomes Superman, etc. So that is what your page title is. It gives a brief description about what the page is about. So you do not highlight the keywords in the page title, but you highlight it in the remaining of the document. Okay, then headings and headlines. It's used to find the screen content of interest. So just an example, if you're Googling something in the search button and you hit search, what is immediately displayed are headings and headlines of what is most relevant to what you have searched, right? Headline should be brief. Headline should give the content of what you are searching for. It should be descriptive and it should be straightforward. So now these are just some words that you might not want to use. So just a few have been listed out. Maybe you could go through this with the slides that I have shared with you. So these are some of creative, meaningful icons and images that we use in our day-to-day lives. So we can see that we have this, magnifying glass, which yeah, so we have this magnifying glass which represents maybe zooming. We have this button which shows a play button. We all know that it's very commonly used, right? So this I button shows information, and then again this one is depicting a new message or an email. So similarly, you have many icons that depict a lot of, that gives meaning instead of using text. So how do you create these images? So when you're creating images, they should be familiar and of concrete shapes. So basically anybody who sees those icons should know what it is. That's why you make them familiar. Then you create visually and conceptually distinct shapes so that it is not confusing. So each image or icon that you create should be distinct, right? And then you have to provide consistency within your icon types, and icons are mainly used as a communication between one another with common shapes. So instead of using text, you are using images which gives certain meaning. So these icons are most often used to represent objects and actions, okay, so with which users can interact. So just now we saw that you have a play button. So instead of typing play, which would take up a lot of space, you just have one icon that shows that tells you that you can play a certain thing. Or maybe when you get a text message, instead of saying you have a text message, it would just show you a an envelope symbol which shows that you have a new message. So that's the use of icons. So what are the different characteristics of an icon? So icon should be syntactic, it should have semantics, and it should be pragmatics. So syntactics nothing but refers to the icon's physical structure, right? What is the syntax that is used to create these icons, whether it's being its shape, color, or size. Then semantics, what does it refer to? What is the meaning of that particular icon? Then pragmatics is how the icons are physically produced and depicted, right? So how do you bring to life these particular icons? So influences on your icon usability. Okay, so icons, when you are creating icons, you should provide icons which are familiar, clear, simple, consistent, has directness of meanings, and is efficient and can be distinguished from others. Should not be the same, because again you're using icons so that it becomes more easily understandable by the users. Okay, so that's why it should be simple, it should be clear, and it should be familiar as well. And also you have to consider the context in which the icons are used, and what is the expectancy and the expectancy of the users, and if it's complex or not, if the task that is being performed is complex or not. So how do you choose your icon? So a successful icon usually obviously looks different from others. Then it should be familiar, as in people should know what it does, or it is representing, and it is recognizable when it is no larger than 16 pixels. Obviously you cannot have huge icons, so you have small ones which is around 16 pixels square. So it should be understandable by everybody, and it should look good in black and white as it does in color. Okay, so your icon should be looking good also. Then of course you have your size, and you have a hot zone also, so that you can use it or access it along with a stylus, pen, or even with your finger. So your icon should be adaptable to be used with all. So now again, choosing of images, coming to the same thing, you have to use existing icons when available. Then you use images for nouns and not for verbs. Then you use traditional images and consider cultural and social norms. Okay, so coming to drawing of images, you provide consistency and shape over varying sizes. So do not use any triangular arrows, right, to design, because see, if you notice here, our mouse cursor is a triangular arrow. So in order to avoid confusion with other systems and symbols, you have to use do not use these triangle arrows. Okay, so because if your icon also is an arrow and your cursor also is an arrow, then it is obvious that it will lead to some confusion. So do not do that. Then coming to icon animation and audition. So audition is nothing but creating auditory icons, which is nothing but your audio visuals. Okay, and animation, of course, it is usually done for visual interest, and it is not to be used for decoration, but to be actually used by the users, so that it is more interactive. So what is the design process of this animation? So you define the icon's purpose and use, then you collect and evaluate the sketch ideas. Okay, so obviously you have to check the sketch ideas, whether it is relevant or not, and you have to draw it in black and white. Okay, so using an icon editing utility or a drawing package. So obviously you have various tools for creating icons, so you use that and you design your icons. Then using your graphics in web, so you use graphics to supplement the textual context and not as a substitute for it, to convey information that cannot be effectively accomplished using text. Okay, so that's why you're using graphics, because it supplements or adds to a textual context, and it's not to remove the text but to add your textual content. Then images, so these use standard images, okay, image internationalization, and it provides descriptive text or labels with all images. So these images is to distinguish navigational images from your decorative images, and usually GIFs or JPEG is preferred, and your GIFs are usually your animated objects. Okay, and then coming to your photographs and pictures, so this you use when every aspect of the image is relevant. Okay, so you use photographs in JPEG, pictures, and this is just in order to avoid text content, and which can be done more visually. Then coming to your videos, so videos is just to show a proper way to perform a particular task. So it provides a personal message, and it is basically used to grab attention. Why grab attention? Because when you're showing a video, it's more easily understandable than just textual or audio information. So diagrams, again, it is to show the structure of objects, it shows the relationships of objects, and it shows the flow of a process or a task. So that is what your data flow diagrams are doing. It shows the process or a task. Okay, so animation we already spoke about. It is basically used for more interaction and more visual pleasantness. Audition, again, this is used to supplement text and graphics. So along with showing text and graphics, we provide audio also in the background in order to ensure that the user on the other end is easily understanding what is going on. Then combining of mediums, so you use sensory combination that works best together. So you have auditory text along with your video graphics, and you have screen text along with your visual graphics. Okay, so sometimes you would have seen that there is a video along with text going on in the background, or sometimes there is a graphics that is going on and there is text below it. So this is how you combine different mediums. So coming to learning improvements for various media, so you have your medium and then you have the percentage of learning. Okay, this is just a survey that was taken to see what best the user understands. So hearing spoken text along with viewing visuals is 91% of the people understand more, but hearing only spoken text alone with no visuals or no audio has shown us only 7% are able to learn. So choosing the proper colors. Okay, so colors will add dimension and realism to screen usability. Colors, if it's used properly, attracts a person's eye. Nobody wants to see black and white all the time, so you use colors to make it more attractive. So this is just the different hues of colors that can be used. So color uses, so you can use color to assist in formatting. You can use color as a visual code to identify. So sometimes you want to highlight something or give different information, you can use different colors. Then you can use color to realistically portray natural objects. So a picture looks better in color rather than in black and white. So it increases the screen appeal. So what are the possible problems with color? Now we know that using too much color also is not good, or using colors that contrast each other also is not good. So if you're using high saturation colors or too much of a bright color, it hurts the it creates eye fatigue, and too much of red and blue also creates eye fatigue. There's sometimes confusion when some people cannot see certain colors, etc. So these are different problems that comes with using too much color. So then choosing colors for categories of information. So color chosen to organize information or data on a screen must aid the transfer of information. So when you're trying to give different categories of information, you can use different color codes. Like for example, if you want to highlight something that's really important in a document which is black and white, maybe you could use red color to show that it is very important. Or maybe sometimes you can use the color blue to show that it's not too important but of slight importance, etc. And sometimes headings and headlines are usually given in different colors. So you never rely on color as the only way of identifying a screen element, right? Because sometimes irrelevant information if given on the screen, then it doesn't make sense. So then color in context. So colors are subject to different contextual effects. You have small adjacent colored images may appear to the eye to merge or mix. Okay, so if you have images that is described in red and pink, then sometimes your eye might not be able to grasp it, and it might appear to the eye as being, as it merges or mixes. So dark color of a background will look lighter and brighter than the same color on a light background. So how to use this? So usage, you first design for monochrome meaning shades of black, white and gray. By doing this, you will permit the screen to be effectively used by people with color viewing deficiency. So black, white and gray is usually what the color that most people can see, even if they have a viewing deficiency. Some people cannot see color, so they can see color in monochrome. So in conditions where ambient lighting is also not allowed, so then this color code never fails. So discrimination and harmony. So you can you have to use harmonious colors. You cannot use discriminated colors. So you cannot use red, pink and orange together because that would hurt the eye. So you have to use colors which are more harmonious. So like using red and yellow, or maybe red and green, or maybe red and blue or brown, to keep it more harmonious, so that it does not readers do not get confused or merge colors, etc. So the emphasis is to draw attention. Now if at all you want to draw attention to certain elements, you use brighter highlighted colors. So like I said, if you want to draw attention to a particular headline, or you want to give a particular heading, so you use certain bright colors so that it is understandable by everybody. So what are the common meanings? Okay, so you can just go through this slide at your leisure. It has already been shared with you what different colors have different meanings. So by birth we would have studied that red means danger, green means go, yellow is to be ready. So like similarly other colors like white or gray gives neutrality, etc. So again, these are some common meanings. So high illumination is active, low illumination is emotional. So this is the type of indications with different colors that is psychologically affecting the humans also when they see the various colors. So location and ordering. So how you what location you use for each color and how you order these colors. So like I already said, you cannot use red, orange and pink together because it would be very confusing. So you try to use a red sentence, maybe then use blue, and then you use maybe violet or something, so that in order to keep the effect more harmonious and easy to read. So foreground and background. So foreground is the text that comes in front, while the background is the the color, that is contrast color, that is behind the text. So usually foregrounds have to be neutral color, while backgrounds can be dark or light. If the background is light, then you obviously your foreground text should be bright, and if the background is dark, then obviously you keep the foreground text light. So if your background is say black, then foreground you use a white text, and if your background is white, then foreground you use a black text, right? So similarly, that is what is explained here. So background, you use color that do not compete with the foreground. Obviously you cannot have your white text and a white background also, it has to be contrasted. So grayscale is used for fine discrimination. So as said, use the monochrome of black, gray and white scale. Okay, so recommended values are: white is usually the text background, the screen background. Light gray is the background of a push button. So maybe you have an OK button or something, so that would be light gray. Medium gray is which is your icon background or maybe a drop down menu. This is just so that you can differentiate between each of these values. Then dark gray could be your window border, and then the black could be text. So this is how we usually notice it in most websites. Okay, so coming to text in color. So text in color is not as visible as it is in black. So when switching text from black to color, you have to double the width of lines. So usually we would have seen that if you're trying to use blue or red, it is not very or as visible as it is in black. So you have to increase either the width or you have to bolden it, and you have to check the legibility of it by squinting your eyes. Why do you do this? So that you know that everybody can read the text. So this is again some effective combinations that you can use in the foreground and your background. So this also you can just go through. Slides have been shared with you. So then coming to choosing color for web pages. When you're choosing color for web pages, always remember the color should be in contrast, okay, and color should always be used in context and never in isolation. So you use similar color schemes throughout a website to maintain a proper sense of place. And foreground should always be different from your background. You cannot have the same colors for foreground and background. To always ensure that these colors can be visible by everybody who is using the particular website. Alright, then high intensity colors should be avoided. So too much background red or magenta, etc. should not be used. Try to go in for more flat and safe colors. Okay, so now relying exclusively on color also is not a good thing, and too many colors at one time, one place is also not great. And using low brightness of colors also. So all these components should be kept in mind, because using too much color also is not good. Now since your website is going to be used across the globe, so if it is, if you are giving too much color, it does not come across as professional. So you have to use the spectrum of colors properly. Okay, so pure blue for text, thin lines and small shapes can be used. Then colors in small areas should be avoided. Then colors for fine details also. So usually black, gray and white, as said before, will provide a better resolution. Adding too much color, you will miss the fine details that you want to write. So non-opponent colors. Okay, so red and yellow, green and blue, etc. is non-opponent. They will hurt your eyes. So recommended is red and green or yellow and blue. So it should be a contrasting color. Alright, then of course adjacent colors only differing in the amount of blue they possess should be avoided, as in indigo, light blue, dark blue, etc. Using them together should be avoided, and single color distinctions for color deficient users. So try to again use monochrome of your black, white and gray, because color deficient users cannot see red and blue usually. So these are some of the things that you have to avoid when it comes to color. Alright, so that completes this part of module 4. Thank you.